Hopefully that's worked. Perfect. So just before I hand over to Cheryl, just a couple of lines of who Benenden Health are, if you're not familiar. We are a healthcare provider, and we've been supporting and working with civil service organisations such as the Northern Ireland Civil Service since 1923, and now this support has been extended for us to be able to deliver these bespoke sessions for you today, which hopefully will continue. I know there's a few more booked in. I think there's an anxiety one tomorrow, so there's a few more booked in over the coming weeks and months. If colleagues want more information or what resources we have available at Benenden Health, or if you're not already a member and you wanting to join Benenden Health, I will pop some details into the chat pane throughout the session, my email address and so on and so forth. The slides will be available following the session. I think either Ronan or Emily will pop details into the chat as to where these can be accessed. So without further ado, I am now going to turn my camera off and I'm going to pass the session over to Cheryl.
Cheers, Mark. Thank you. Afternoon, everybody. I don't know what it's like in Belfast today, but it's beautiful up here in York. The weather's absolutely great. And I was actually in your beautiful city Wednesday, Thursday, Friday last week, seeing some of the facilities, clinical facilities out there. Oh my goodness, don't you live in a beautiful part of the world? You have an absolutely lovely city. Had such a phenomenal professional visit, but also saw some really lovely things as well while we were out there. So yeah, blown away by your city. It's beautiful, guys, is Belfast. So today's session's on loneliness. I know that I've done a few sessions for you guys before, but just for anybody who's not met me, my name's Cheryl. I'm the society matron for Benenden, and what that actually means is I provide their clinical consultancy. So whether that's on a member's journey, whether that's accrediting a facility, whether it's product innovation or supporting in education as we're doing now, I do a whole raft of things for the society. And I suppose what enables me to do that is my background. So I'm a nurse consultant by background. I worked in general practice for a lot of years on exactly the same level as a GP. So anything that you would have seen your GP with, I would have seen and managed in exactly the same way. I also did a lot of things from a commissioning point of view, so procurement of service, setting up of service, transformation of service. If it had an NHS buzzword around it, I've probably looked at it in some format. And then the other thing that I am is a social scientist. And that's just a really lazy and academic way of saying I'm nosy. I love to understand what makes people tick, why we choose to do certain things, why we choose to, you know what I mean, decide on certain pathways and not take others. And I'm in the middle, well, I'm coming up to the end now of doing a PhD, a research PhD. So if you hear of a little Yorkshire woman rocking in a corner somewhere, you know it's getting up to hand-in date, and that will be me, definitely. So let's have a look at loneliness as we go on to our first slide. Now, there's no actual set definition for loneliness, but generally it's described as this mismatch between the quantity. Oh, a bit too fast, Mark. Thank you. I know I can chat, but I'm not that quick at chatting. So it's this mismatch between the quantity and the quality of the social relationships that we have. You know, it's in comparison to those that we actually want. So what we find is that it is a very much an emotional, not a physical state, is loneliness. That being said, we do know that it affects us physically as well. It's not the same as social isolation, although we do know that those that are socially isolated can definitely have increased risk of loneliness. And what happens is we get this real unpleasant emotional response to that perceived isolation that we've got. Now, our bodies generally, they grow with warmth, with touch, with acceptance, awareness, vocalization. We've got to feel as though we're being seen, and that's how our bodies grow and our personalities and our emotions. And what happens when we get all of those facets in our lives? It releases some of our happy hormones. And what we do know is that compassion can definitely decrease our stress hormones. Our cortisol levels can go down. So that increase in self-compassion, so the compassion that we give ourselves, equals a definite increase in our emotional security, but also in our mental well-being as well. The thing with loneliness, and some of these stats really take my breath away a little bit, it silences loneliness and it's really contagious. It affects 1 in 3 of us. And I think if the coronavirus pandemic has shown us anything when we were going through those periods of lockdown, I think we will have all felt some facet of loneliness. And some of us will have been very lucky and come through the other side of that. But actually, for some of us, that loneliness may have grown, which is really uncomfortable, isn't it? It's an uncomfortable thing. When you are lonely, chronically lonely, it's thought to be more damaging than obesity. And we all know that extra jiggle in your wiggle is not good for our health. So it is quite frightening when we know that loneliness is more damaging. And we know that it's definitely on the increase. And we know that if you are lonely, it will increase your risk of Alzheimer's. Now, a lot of people just presume that loneliness is down to it's just the elderly, or those that can't get out and about. But actually, you can be lonely anywhere. You can be at work, you can be in the middle of a crowded room, you can be eating a meal in a restaurant and you can feel lonely. It can definitely affect you irrespective of where you are. It's more than that physical being. It's an entirely holistic whole body effect. So if we look at the next slide, we've already said we know that it's not just older people. Pre-pandemic, these figures are from pre-pandemic, and we knew that 15% of working age people reported feeling lonely. One thing I would take from this stat is these are the people who've truthfully reported. So I think these figures are dramatically under-egged. A similar number of people, so that's 65 to 79-year-olds, so that generic usual retirement age, 15% of those report feeling lonely, but 29% over the age of 80. And we do know that, it is more predominant in the elderly, but it's not only the preserve of the elderly. And it can affect anybody, whether it's a young child, school-aged child, or whether it's a grandpa sat at home. It can go through the full gamut of age and range. But we know that certain things can trigger it, and also certain people can be more at risk. So, for example, certain personal circumstances can make things feel worse. Bereavement definitely can make us feel very lonely. Poor health, so people with chronic long-term health conditions or for debilitating short-term health conditions can struggle with loneliness. People who live alone, and sometimes it's absolutely lovely to live alone, but what you want on the TV, go to bed when you want, watch TV. But those that live alone are more at risk. Doesn't mean to say that everybody is, but more at risk. Remember what we said though as well about you can be in a crowded room. So actually you can be in the middle of the noisiest, largest, busiest family and still feel lonely. People who've got no transport definitely can narrow their field a little bit. If you become a carer, if you live on a low income, all of those things can definitely make you feel more vulnerable and definitely increase your risk of vulnerability. And we know that the potential increases with age, and older people are more likely to suffer, but then other groups also can suffer, irrespective of age. So certain ethnicities definitely can suffer. So certain cultural groups, so if you moved abroad to a country that you didn't speak their endemic language, you may start to feel lonely because you can't make those personal connections. Certain sexual groups, people who have alternative sexualities, may feel lonely because they may feel that they've not got that representation, that awareness, that visibility in society, and that can lead into loneliness. And then also certain ethnicities as well, they can struggle. And it all makes people very, very vulnerable. What sort of like adds on to that is that, especially so like as we've gone through the pandemic, we know that there's been an awful lot of cuts in funding, in social funding. So councils have cut support groups, play groups, transport services, all of these things that build into our entertainment culture. So if you're on a low income and the only time you get out might be to a mother and baby group, and that's had to be cut, that's your, you know what I mean, you're more and more at risk of becoming quite insular and socially isolated. Now, I know that we'd said earlier on that it is an emotional feeling, it does affect us physically. We know that 66% of those lonely said that their general health was poor. 36% of 16 to 24-year-olds reported feeling more lonely of late. And that might be because of a pandemic response, but also it might be because money's not as easily come by, social groups are dropping down, and a lot of I'm going to sound like my grandma now, but a lot of younger people, their social interaction is on media platforms. It's through their mobile phones, through TikTok, Twitter, Faceache, Insta, all of those kind of things. That's where they get their social validation and interaction. So, you know, they're not actually seeing people and talking to people. So that might feed into that 36% of 16 to 24-year-olds. But 41% of over 75s reported a definite increase in their loneliness. Now, in Northern Ireland itself, there was a report that was released in 2019. Couldn't find any more up-to-date data, I'm afraid, but 35 respondents within that said that they were definitely feeling lonely, with it being skewed to more female than male from a loneliness point of view. And it gave an overall figure of 1 in 5 within Northern Ireland being affected. And we know that the Northern Ireland government are looking at doing some collaborative strategies to try and help with that. But we also know that funds are not always prevalent, are they? So that it can be a bit of a challenge. From a GP point of view, they started organising things called social prescribers to help support loneliness. Now, social prescribers is a bit of a misdemeanor of a title, really. You expect to go in and to see your social prescriber and be given a prescription of sorts. But social prescribers aren't medics, they're not medically trained. But what they do have is a real depth and breadth of information and knowledge about what's available within their local area. So a social prescriber may prescribe, for want of a better word, a gardening group, a reading group, an amateur dramatics group, a volunteering group, something of that nature to help support the loneliness. If they know that you're of a low income, there's strategies that they can use there to fund these groups for you. And the job of the social prescriber is to help support that mental and social well-being, because we do know that if that mental and social well-being isn't supported, that physical well-being that sits as our foundation is definitely going to be affected. So, you know, definitely have a look out for your social prescribers within your general practice surgeries. So let's have a look at what the consequences are really when we think about loneliness. We definitely know that there's health and social impacts for people who suffer from loneliness. And if you're lonely, you are much more likely to suffer with anxiety and depression and a raft of other mental well-being disorders. And it sort of makes sense, and we'll go on to why as we move on, but definitely the numbers are high. So already we've got this emotional condition that's starting to affect us mentally. We know that those that are lonely are at a higher risk of blood pressure and developing dementia. So rather than it just being this emotional, we know it's affecting us mentally, but then we also know that it's affecting us physiologically, so our physical health. And it is said to be more damaging to health than being inactive or obese. And actually, one of the best things that you can do for your overall health is be active. Yeah, it is important to eat the rainbow, get a good healthy diet in there. But we know that the research tells us there's some fairly new research out that says the more active you are, the healthier you are going to be. So even if you've got more cuddle factor than you should have, you're a bit heavier than you should have, if you are active being overweight, you are healthier than if you are inactive and being a healthy weight. So it's definitely important to get up and be active there. They say that it's loneliness is on a par with smoking about 15 cigarettes a day. So that's hellishly high. So imagine if you're a smoker, that's double whammy in your risk, isn't it? So definitely something to have a think about there. The next few stats are based on older people, but older people who are lonely are 1.8 times more likely to visit their GPs. Now, I definitely know from my primary care days that I would get certain patients who would come in to see me maybe once a month. There wasn't really any clinical reason they needed to see me. It would be to touch base on a medication query or to have a chat and look at a spot that we'd looked at the month before. It was those connectivity things that that person just wanted to have some social interaction with somebody. And we definitely used to see people who would come a good half an hour to an hour before their appointment just so that they could chat with somebody in the waiting room. And that for me is a little bit of a breath stopping moment, that maybe the only time that you're going to chat with somebody is in your doctor's waiting room. It's a little bit of a hold breath moment. We know that older people are 1.6 times more likely to visit their A&E departments, and they're 3.5 times more likely to enter local authority care. So whether that's in assisted living, whether that's into a residential home, whether that's into a nursing home, we know that if elderly people are lonely or older people are lonely, they are much more likely to need those health resources. And we've got to remember that's a very, very necessary but a very high pull, not only on healthcare, but on social resources that are available as well. So let's have a look then and see what we can do and why we find that how does being lonely affect us from a whole body point of view. So I appreciate that we're only 20 minutes in, but I am dry, sorry. There we go. And I hope that you are all getting up and jiggling your wiggle occasionally and moving the bodies, because if we're talking about inactivity, let's not stay stagnant for an hour. So when we look at it from what we call a biopsychosocial point of view, the body, as people, we are social animals. Yep. We need to have meaningful contacts, and those meaningful contacts could be socially, they could be professionally, they could be within a family setting, but we need to feel as though we've made a contact with somebody at some point. Okay. When we feel lonely, we get this feeling that's initiated, and it signals to the brain that something isn't right. Don't quite know what it is. It's just this innate feeling that something's not there. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that we feel seen. We need to feel heard. We need to feel valued, because what that does is it validates us as people. It validates our identity. Now, if we don't get that biologically, so this physical sense that we have, we get increased illness. And when we are unwell, our symptoms tend to be worse, and our self-management strategies tend to drop by the wayside. So we don't look after ourselves as well. We know that we struggle with sleep issues when we're lonely. So biologically, physiologically, that definitely affects us because we know that sleep deprivation is a real challenge for mind and body. And the other thing that tends to happen is we tend to get issues around eating. So a lot of people who are lonely either overeat or undereat. And the things that we tend to overeat on tend to be things that aren't as good for us. So, you know, we don't sit there with 3 plates of veggies a day. We might have, if we're lucky, a plate of veggies a day, but then lots of biscuits, cakes, sweets, savoury things, just to keep us going because we feel that it's giving us this endorphin thing. And then what happens then is that affects us, our ability, it affects our self-esteem. So we don't want to go out, so it feeds into our loneliness, and it's this perpetuating cycle. Now, then what happens from a behavioural point of view is we start disengaging from those few contacts that we have, and it means that we become socially isolated. It might also mean that actually your work performance might struggle as well. And sometimes what we do find, and this is a generalisation, is that people get poor hygiene and their activity reduces. So behaviourally, there's certain cues that happen that leads to a cascade of things, and that then definitely feeds back into that biological effect where they become more unwell because they're not active, they're not eating well, they're not looking after themselves. And in our perpetuating circle, psychologically, what we find is that people get very low confidence. It can make them then feel quite anxious to go out. They've got this ingrained mentality that they need to stay in. Nobody wants to see them. Their self-worth is down. Their self-esteem is low. So then confidence goes. And that then feeds into a depression and anxiety cycle. They can get quite a lot of negative emotions. Their coping skills from a mental well-being are low, and so everything then just seems to be that mountain rather than that molehill. One of the things that is really linked into our biopsychosocial health, so our whole health, is our self-esteem, and we're just going to have a little chat around that on the next slide. So your self-esteem is tied into whether we feel whether we're a good or bad person. And a lot of people are really concerned about how other people view them. Now, some don't care. Some are quite happy in their own little world. Some tell us they're quite happy in their own little world, but actually it does affect. But there is a lot of people who we know others' opinion of them definitely does bother them. And that then can make this loneliness cycle much worse because they don't feel as though they're worthy of being out and about with other people. Now, I know that Your Worth It is a hair product advert, isn't it? But actually, it is true. You're worth your time, you're worth your energies, you're worth your emotions. And you've got to be worth that self-esteem, because when your self-esteem is low, it decreases your confidence, it decreases your ability, and it decreases your self-respect. But by the same token, high self-esteem can also be damaging. So low self-esteem usually means that you've got increased depression and anxiety, lower levels of self-worth, lower levels of self-compassion and kindness. You know, that's where we sit when we don't have very good self-esteem. But those that have very high self-esteem, so those narcissistic tendencies, what we find with those people is that they feel that they are extra special, that they're above average, that they're better than us mere mortals with normal self-esteem. They're so much brighter and shinier. And what that breeds in itself, that narcissistic culture, it breeds a very unattainable friendship to have. We've got to remember, really, haven't we? Not everybody is above average. Not everybody is below average. The point of being average is we're all middle of the road. Hey, and I'll tell you, I'm quite happy with being average, you know? It means that I'm keeping in my lane and that I can push myself if I need to, and I can pull myself up when I need to, because that is your normality. Yeah. And it's about not judging yourself against somebody else, because that might increase your risk of failure. So if you're in a relationship with somebody who's got that very high self-esteem, if you're working next to them, if you've got a family member that's like that, your need is to meet up to their expectation. And like I say, most of us are average and really, really good at being average and really happy and content and fulfilled about that. So actually always trying to meet somebody's very, very high expectation isn't good within ourselves. Now, to support your self-esteem, you need this degree of self-compassion. And it's really just sort of like an extension of your kindness, of your care, of that warmth and understanding that we've got, you know, that appreciating ourselves the same way that we appreciate everybody else. And it means that we've got some really common humanity traits, and that's and it sets us apart on how we manage and support ourselves. So how we view ourselves from our self-esteem point of view determines if we're worthy of that self-compassion. So actually, if your self-esteem is really low, you'll feel that you're not actually worthwhile having any self-compassion there, you know. And what those two can give us some real perceptible clues as to how we fit in, where we fit in. So what I mean by that is if you're at work and you hear a colleague, or I'm sorry, Mark, I'm going to pick on you, get ready. But if you hear a colleague or a friend or anything like that say, blooming heck, did you see Mark? It were a right lazy thing when we were trying to get that report finished. And if Mark had overheard that, that would actually feed into his self-esteem. And it may knock his self-esteem and think, well, I tried really, really hard on that. I really did. I tried to do my very best and it really wasn't appreciated. So then his self-esteem's going to be knocked, and it might find then that he thinks, well, why bother? Why should I bother with it? So then it starts nipping into that being kind to yourself, your self-worth and your self-compassion. And if you're faced with that as a continual, it can definitely start knocking those bricks away. And what we do see is a lot of people who are in abusive relationships, this is part of the cycle that they get. And even though they're in that relationship, they actually may feel quite lonely within there. So some people have this mentality of thought that we need to have a level of self-criticism to help us get up and give us our boom to get up and go. And this could be, you know what I mean, oh, I'm going to have to go to the gym because I look fat in my jeans. Or it could be, I really have to go on a diet because I'm 3 times bigger than my best friend. You know, it could be those kind of things that sort of like oh gosh, what's the word, that toxic way of trying to motivate yourself for doing something. You know, I'm going to have to get this piece of work finished because Mark's going to be on my back next week if it's not done. It's that sort of like negative criticism, that toxic environment that we put our bodies in. But actually what the body needs is it needs warmth, it needs touch, it needs self-vocalization, because we know, we've already said, that increases our endorphins, our happy hormones, and that self-compassion decreases our stress levels. So if you are ever feeling stressed, do something for you. You are giving yourself your self-compassion, because as the advert says, I've not enough hair to flick now, but we are worth it. Now, what can we do? What can we do to help and support this type of thing? So first of all, we've got a group of things. I suppose what it is about recognizing and identifying what we're actually feeling, and whether this is in yourself or within somebody else. And it's by doing it as a bit of a stepped approach. So if I felt, cheers Mark, thank you. If I felt that I was feeling lonely in myself, first and foremost, I would try and name the emotion. So, am I lonely? Am I anxious? Am I stressed? Am I cross? Am I frustrated? Am I happy? I am thirsty, so I'll have a quick drink, sorry. But if I can name my emotion, then I can look at what strategies can help with that one. And by the same token, if I was looking at Mark and I'd noticed in the office that Mark had stopped coming and having a sandwich or a cup of tea with us during a break, if he'd started withdrawing from social events, it would be recognising and saying to Mark, are you okay? You know, is there anything that we can help support with? Is there anything that you need us to do for you? Yeah. Can we support you in any way? So it's about recognizing that not only in yourself, but in others, and then looking at this stepwise approach. So first and foremost, what I would suggest is it's about increasing or reconnecting with those known contacts that we've got. So usually when we're feeling lonely, we do see people at some point in some way, and it's about making sure that we make those connections. Even if it's the last thing you feel like doing, make yourself get out there and speak to somebody. Now, if you don't feel able, if your anxiety or your funds or whatever don't make it able for you to get out and about there physically, you know, there's lots of other ways that you can do it. You can go retro and write a letter to somebody that you've not seen, because I don't know about you guys, but I love a chatty letter dropping on the doormat. It's a thing of bygone days, but it does feel lovely to catch up on somebody that way. Get on a digital platform, connect with somebody over social media, yeah, but definitely increase or reconnect with those connections that you've had before. I would put a caveat that if you're going to use social media, so whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, be careful what you're doing. Remember, a lot of that is very, very sanitized. You know, you'll get photos that have been filtered to within an inch of their life. You'll get people who post about their amazing families and wonderful homes and unbelievable home life projects that they're doing. It's sanitized. It doesn't show you the down and dirty things that have gone on to get that photo or anything else. So keep that reality in mind, but definitely reach out and say hello to somebody from that point of view. So if you feel that your social circle is really small and you want to expand it, definitely look at how you can grow some new connections. So if it's from a professional point of view and you're feeling as though you're wanting to help and build and promote your professional connections, have a look and see, are you in a position where you could mentor a junior colleague? Would you yourself benefit from mentoring? Is there somebody out there that could do some coaching with you? Because part of what we do in this professional environment that we're in is this ability to present a certain image. And when we're feeling lonely and our self-esteem is low, that coaching could help you to push through and give you, you know what I mean, that professional image that you feel that you're worthy of, because you are worth it. So definitely professionally, have a look at what's around you. If actually the only people that you see at work are the only people that you see are at work, then other things to think about are create a walking group on a lunchtime, you know, get a couple of colleagues, and rather than eating your butties at your desk, say, right, shall we go for a walk around the park or the town or up to the bridge and back, and have a walking lunch and start chatting? Because when you're walking, it's easy conversation. You're not directly looking at somebody because you're both looking forward. You can talk about the environment around you. You don't have to talk about work or home life, and it can help to start growing those connections. So, you know, whether it be a walking group, whether it be a gardening group, whether it be a volunteering group, find something professionally if that's your only method of connecting with people. If actually you're at home and you're ready to start getting out of the home and doing, have a look at other things. So have you got a hobby? You know what I mean? Do you love to go to the theatre, or do you love reading books? Then go to a book group, or go ask if you can help at a theatre group. And that might be help serving teas. It might be helping putting chairs out. You know, if you're feeling really brave, it might be getting on the stage and doing your Hamlet soliloquy. Whatever it is, try and get yourself into something that you already love doing. So if you love knitting, get into a crafting group. If you love gardening, go help support a local care home with their gardens. Increase your social circles through your current hobbies because you've got a connective factor there. Definitely have a look at those. If money's tight, then volunteering can help. We've already had a chat about those social prescribers. They can definitely help to get you out there. Volunteering definitely can be a big bonus from that point of view. And actually, if you think, well, I haven't got a hobby, I like gaming, I like sitting on my computer all day, then there can be befriending services that can join the dots there that can help from that point of view. And if it is, all you like doing is gaming or doing something of that nature, there is big online communities that do meet out and about, or go retro and join a board game group because they're so much fun, honestly. The only thing I would say about those is don't do Trivial Pursuits. It gets highly competitive, but hey ho. The next thing that I'd want you to do, no, sorry, Mark, we'll go back to what was on the slide, please, if you don't mind. Thank you. The next part, so step 3, is about getting chatty. And what I mean by this is start using the power of your voice, start vocalizing at every opportunity. Probably noticed it doesn't take much for me to chat, but I chat to everybody, anywhere, at any time. And what that does is it helps me connect with people. But then also, if at any point I need to go back and help that person, we've already made that connection. So if you're just starting out at this, well, what I mean by get chatty is when you're at the supermarket, rather than go through the self-service where you don't interact with anybody, go through a proper cash register one, go through, the trolley one, and have a chat to the person as they're putting your shopping through. Now, it might be the age-old, have you been busy today? But actually, that might be the only meaningful conversation you've had. It might be, can you suggest something really yummy for tea? I've had no inspiration as I've walked around that supermarket today, but have a chat. If you have to get public transport as you're paying your ticket, say good morning to the bus driver. How's your day been? Are you having a good day? Now, if the bus driver's a bit of a grumbly bum and goes, yeah, I'm fine, that's absolutely fine. Go sit down. You've made that connection. You've tried it and worked. Waiting for the kettle to boil, a water cooler conversation. Try and increase that chattiness because it will make it much easier when we're looking at growing connections and increasing and reconnecting with contacts. So definitely have a look at that and use every opportunity you can to get chatty with folk. So one of my favourite sayings is jiggling your wiggle. So this goes bound to trying to manage that inactivity that we have. And jiggling your wiggle is not about pulling on lycra and running 10k or going to the gym and moving heavy weights or doing a class. Jiggling your wiggle is about movement. This is about getting the body up and moving because it is the single most effective thing that we can do for our health and lifestyle. Now you can choose to jiggle your wiggle as a solo entity. You could have, do a Joe Wicks workout, you could have a kitchen disco, you could do whatever you wanted. But actually, if you are lonely, jiggling your wiggle is a great way to meet people. So if you don't have a dog, pinch somebody's dog, acquire the next door neighbour's dog and take it for a walk, because the amount of people who will say good morning, hello, how are you doing, if you have a dog, absolutely triples to if you were walking out by yourself. Same thing happens with bambinos, although they're a little bit harder to acquire sometimes. As parents, we're not overly happy to give our bambinos to people we don't know very well. But if you've got bambinos, or if you've got grandchildren or nephews or nieces or anything, take them to the park for half an hour. Go walking with them for half an hour. Take them into town, into a cafe, because that conversation, it's an icebreaker. People look and go, oh, he's beautiful. How old is he? Oh, is he always that energetic? Oh, he doesn't like his peas, does he? And it's a really easy conversation opener, and it helps to get you into that movement of speaking. So whatever activity you choose, do get up and jiggle your wiggle. It'll help you physically, it'll help you from a loneliness emotional point of view, and it'll help stress, anxiety, etc. from a mental well-being point of view. And then my final one is about the resources that are available behind us. So if we're feeling lonely, it's really, really important that we're open and honest about it. Remember what we said way back at the beginning about identifying and naming that emotion, and then having a look at what you've got around you. So this could be your HR departments, it could be setting up that walking group, it could be volunteering in something, but have a look at what work has available for you. And actually, if you feel that your anxiety is preventing that jiggling your wiggle, that getting chatty, that growing connections, if you feel that actually it's the anxiety that's preventing that, then have a look at what's available around and about you within work, or if you're a Benenden member within Benenden that can support that. So from a Benenden point of view, if you're a member, we've got our mental health wellbeing line, absolutely phenomenal. And you can give them a one-off telephone call if you just want to have a quick chat with them about something. Or if it's something a little bit more intensive, they can organise counselling and therapy sessions, interventional sessions for you to help support that anxiety so we can get you back out and building those social connections again. There's lots and lots of information on the Benenden app, so download the Benenden app and have a look on there. There's loads of health education on everything from movement, so jiggling your wiggle, to improving your diet, to managing physical health issues, and also supporting mental well-being. So definitely have a look on there, and there is some accessibility on there on booking sessions out with some of our collaborative partners if you need their help and support as well. But definitely have a look at what's around you. And if you don't feel that there's enough around you from a work and a Benenden point of view, think about those social prescribers that are at your GPs. Think about things like volunteer groups. Think about going and helping doing gardening at care homes, at nurseries, all that kind of thing can definitely get you out and start making those connections. So it's about building up that reservoir, I suppose, of information that you've got. And if actually you've had a really good day, you've been really positive, you've got on with everybody, it's felt as though it's a real great connecting day, you've got home back to a quiet, empty house, and you can feel your mood dip again, then remember, go back to what we said right on step one. Make a phone call for somebody, write a letter to somebody. Yep, go jiggle your wiggle round the park with the dog or something of that nature. In those moments when you get that real acute feeling of, you know what I mean, self-esteem issues, loneliness issues, self-worth issues, push yourself in that comfort zone, go and remake those connections. And let's, as we move on to our last slide now, we're just on about any questions really. Now, given the option, I would like to be that lady snuggled down on the sofa with the dog on top of me. I would love to think that our dog would stay like that, but I know jolly well that she wouldn't. She'd just be diving all over me, but that's a lovely picture. I love that one. Has anybody got any questions for me this afternoon? Resounding silence. So I've either sent you all to sleep, or I've given you lots of information to reflect on. It's going to be one or the other. By all means, Mark's put his email address on there. Now, I do appreciate some of the subjects that we've chatted about might be a bit triggering, and also might not make people feel comfortable to put it in an open forum. So if you are finding that you're struggling with loneliness, mental well-being problems, abusive relationships, anything of that nature, please do send a private message through to Mark, on his email address. It usually takes me 24 to 48 hours to answer, and I always answer all questions and help and support from that point of view. But hopefully you've found it useful. You've got 10 minutes, and within your 10 minutes, I'm tasking you to move your buttocks. Get up and jiggle your wiggle a little bit, guys. You've been sat for 50 minutes. Make sure that you hydrate very, very well. Make sure you've got something lovely and healthy to eat. That's my fruit that I've been snacking on. And have an absolutely blooming marvellous day. That's me done.
Thank you, Cheryl. Judging by some of the emojis, very, very well received. Plenty of content there, and really the content is how it affects us all individually. So, brilliant content. The slides and the recording will be available following this session. I think Emily and Ronan will sort that out behind the scenes. There is another session tomorrow for those what are booked onto our session tomorrow on anxiety. As Cheryl said, my details are in the messaging facility. Please, if there is any burning questions following this, pop them into an email, send them to me, and we can follow them up accordingly. Equally, if you are wanting to be a member, or if you're not a member again, please send me an email and we can look at that in more detail as well. But thank you for everyone who's joined this session. Hopefully we can provide more information and more sessions going forward. As I said, there is another session tomorrow, but it is 10 to 3. We have given you 10 minutes back. So please have a good day, and we will see you again very soon.
Bye, everybody. See you later.
Thanks, Mark and Cheryl. It's Emily here from Well. I hope my microphone is working a wee bit better now.
Yes.
Hopefully you can hear me. I just want to jump on at the end just to say a big thank you for today. Another amazing session. The Benenden sessions are always one of our best. So thank you so much for all the information. And just to everyone, I will be sending a wee evaluation through. If you wouldn't mind filling it out, that would be wonderful. And I'll also send any slides or information that I get sent through, Mark, if you wouldn't mind. And I can forward that on to anyone who wants it. And just thank you very much. And I hope you all join in on the anxiety session tomorrow as well, if need be. So thanks very much again.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And I will send you the slides following this session, Emily.
Perfect. Thanks so much now. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you later, guys.